What's the point of a building? Why put so much time and effort into creating a great stone edifice if eventually it will all come crashing down? Humans could simply live in vast cities of faceless towers devoid of decoration and life, yet we continue to make things harder for ourselves. We want to make our buildings beautiful. But what makes a building beautiful then? Some believe it should be remarkable on its own, that it should stand out from its neighbors. Others believe there is beauty in the mundane or even the ugly, that a building's magnificence lies in its ability to contribute to the overall character of its neighborhood. The McGraw-Hill building was never considered grand, revolutionary, or remarkable. Opened in 1929 on Michigan Avenue in Chicago's River North neighborhood, the only thing the press found notable about the 16-story Art Deco building was its main tenant, the McGraw-Hill Publishing Company. No one at the time was particularly awed by the building's vertical lines, setbacks, or even reliefs, which had been etched by one of the first successful female sculptors in America, Gwen Lux. To 1920 Chicago, the McGraw-Hill was just another office building. But this seemingly drab office building still had a few gems of architectural beauty, Lux's reliefs. Known for combining the abstract with realism, Lux's etchings are simplistic yet decisive. The building's fourth floor is lined with square concrete panels, each depicting a different zodiac symbol. The fifth floor is adorned with three figures from classical mythology, Diana, Atlas, and Helios. These three deities are distinctly Art Deco in style, which some architectural critics have referred to as Greco-Deco because of its incorporation of classical figures. All of these etchings ground the building in both its era and place of construction. Diana, the Roman goddess of the hunt, accompanied by her traditional quiver and deer, also wears a loose robe and smart head cap, making her look like a 1920s flapper. Atlas, the titan who is famously damned to hold up the heavens for all eternity, is depicted here at the center of the building's etchings, watching over the zodiac symbols below him. The broad-shouldered keeper of the heavens, Atlas was commonly associated with the spirit of Chicago, which Carl Sandburg referred to in a poem as the city of broad shoulders. Helios, the Greek sun deity, is depicted alongside a horse, which pulls his sun chariot in Greek mythology, in accordance with artistic tradition. But an eagle perches on his wrist, an element common of American interpretations of classical scenes, and while Helios would be traditionally depicted at the center of the zodiac, Lux's etchings replace him with Atlas, suggesting a further emphasis of Chicago in her design. While subtle, Lux's reliefs are clearly a deliberate representation of classical mythology through the distinct lens of 1920 Chicago, connecting the McGraw-Hill building with both America and the ancient world. Yet, throughout the 20th century, millions of pedestrians walk past it on Michigan Avenue without feeling a need to gaze at its largely unremarkable facade. Only once the McGraw-Hill building was under siege in the modern world did people finally begin to look up. In 1995, John Buck, a famous Chicago developer, set his sights on the 500 block of North Michigan Avenue. With the city's backing, he wanted to build a mall there, anchored by Nordstrom's department store. The McGraw-Hill would have to come down in order to make way for the project. The Landmarks Preservation Council of Illinois soon caught wind of the project and made several legal appeals to halt it and grant the McGraw-Hill landmark status. Thus began a 2-year political battle, supplemented by a series of arguing editorials in the Chicago Tribune. Some praised the development for its promise of bringing new jobs and economic growth to the area, while some upheld the goal of preservation. After a great deal of legal proceedings, Buck and the preservationists came to a compromise in 1998. The city granted landmark status to only the building's facade, allowing Buck to continue with his project as long as he preserved the building's exterior. So began the world's first known facade-ectomy, as it was dubbed by architects. Workers painstakingly removed the McGraw-Hill building's stone facade, panel by panel, shipping it to a warehouse miles away to be restored. The remaining building was demolished and replaced by a new one, on which the panels were slowly attached. And yet, still the Gwen rarely turns heads from the street. Why then was it saved? How was its beauty recognized? Perhaps the Gwen's classical reliefs allude to more than just mythology. In ancient Rome, buildings were everything. The Romans believed in preserving every building they constructed, not just the most aesthetically significant ones, as a component of their identity as a people. For them, each building was a memory of the city and therefore crucial to its survival. While it wasn't particularly iconic, the McGraw-Hill building made up a crucial piece of the great puzzle that is Chicago. That's why people, in very much a Roman spirit, wanted to save it. Blair Kamin, the Chicago Tribune's architectural critic, wrote of the McGraw-Hill as a first-rate, second-rate building in a 1995 op-ed. If we save only the masterpieces, we miss the extraordinary counterpoint between buildings and the layer upon layer of history which renders cities. To exclusively preserve that which attains our ideal of physical perfection is to do what Mussolini did in the modernization of Rome, ridding the great monuments of their lesser neighbors so as to set them apart in vainglorious, vapid splendor. It is to treat the city as a series of prized objects that bear little relationship to one another, as though they were pieces in a sculpture garden. The real beauty of cities, by contrast, lies in their inclusiveness, through the way masterpieces, the best second-tier buildings, and a range of lesser creatures form a whole that is greater than the sum of their individual parts. The McGraw-Hill building was not significant or remarkable or iconic, but being a piece of Chicago that has, however strangely, survived the test of time is what makes it beautiful.